and I lost my son to asthma. Right after Javante's death, my family and I started the Javante Woods Foundation.
At Javante Woods Foundation, we are determined to spread the word on behalf of Javante. We need your help to continue research and fight asthma from every angle.
Every breath counts.
Please share this video.
Mariners 7-5. Braves beat the Mets 9-5. Nationals over the Cubbies 7-2. Brewers shut out Arizona 4-0. Pirates 14-0 over Cincinnati. And the Cardinals first in the NL Central. They shut out the Rockies 6-0. Dakota Hudson, he's your winning pitcher. He's 13-6 on the season. And I'm Mike McCann.
Follow us anytime on Twitter. Our handle is @CBS Sports Radio.
The only way you can take CBS Sports Radio 1140 with you is with the radio.com app. Download it today and listen to us anytime, anywhere. You found the most in-depth coverage of the Silver and Black. The nation and the league arrive in Las Vegas in 2020. Live from the CBS Sports Radio 1140 studios, it's Silver and Black Today. Join the conversation by calling 702-889-5978. And now, here's your host, Scott Gobranson.
All right, good Monday. It's Monday. Holy crap! Sunday morning. Hey. It's always the best when you go on the air with a flub. Yeah. Right, Mark Bonilla? That's how you should start.
It's always the best.
Always. Mark Bonilla, our executive producer, is in studio today, which makes me feel so good. He's so warm and welcoming, and he's the best. So we're happy to have him here.
How good does it make you feel, Scott? I mean, I know good.
Oh, he comes
I
up.
know good. Believe me. You know who else knows good? Clinton. He knows really good.
Well, yes, and clearly the Chinese with your current battle.
China!
Yes, you're holding him accountable, right? Isn't that what it is? So, yes, Mark can do a Trump.
Off the rails already.
Yes, we're off the rails already. Anyway, you are listening to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio. We are Las Vegas's only, that's right, only all Raiders station. And Raiders show.
Chaz Osborne, Silver and Black today.
The drunk Chaz Osborne. No. Welcome back, everybody. Busy week for the Raiders. Of course, a crazy night in the NFL is one of the game's best steps aside.
Too much coffee.
Retires. Of course, Andrew Luck. We're going to talk about that. Sitting at my right side, as always, is my co-host, Chaz Osborne. Chaz, how are you today?
Feeling good. Ready for a good show.
I cannot.
Let's get the show off the right.
You know what it is?
The right way.
I had too much coffee.
I think you did. You made that coffee pretty strong.
There should not be such a thing as too much coffee, but apparently for me there is, because that's the issue. So anyway, our own Kelly Kreiner is on assignment, and by assignment I mean vacation.
Yep.
Kelly obviously worked so hard on the show. He needed time off.
He needed vacation.
But we are very lucky. The latest member of the CBS Sports 1140 family, Lindsey Brown, joins us. Lindsey, welcome to the show.
Good
Your first time.
Good morning. Thanks for having me, guys. I'm very excited.
Yes, and you get to talk about Raiders football. Now, you are new to Las Vegas, new to the station, of course. Tell everybody a little background, where you came from and how you no longer have to shovel snow.
Well, I'm sure it will come out as we continue to talk over the next couple hours here, but I'm from Minnesota, as you can tell by the accent. So I'm a Vikings fan by choice and heart and soul. But I was telling you guys before the show started, I've always kind of been a closeted Raiders fan.
Yep.
If anything, just for the jerseys, because they are clean. And if there's anything that hockey people really like, it's good-looking jerseys.
Yes.
So
yeah, you are a hockey person, and that is good because you're from Minnesota, and people in Las Vegas are obviously, because of the last couple of years, are very hockey crazy.
They are.
They have a lot to learn still, but that's okay. You have to have a willingness to learn. If you have a willingness to learn, all is good.
Yep.
Just don't pretend like you know everything yet.
Exactly.
But Lindsay, you've spent a little time on the ice.
Couple of minutes here and there.
Couple of minutes.
Yeah.
Lindsay played hockey at St. Anselm's.
Yep.
In
St.
New
Anselm. It's
Anselm.
tough.
Okay.
It's all good.
And I'm
it's all
Catholic.
good.
I should know.
No, half the people at the school couldn't say it the right way, so it's okay. It's okay.
But we are, for those of you, again, we're streaming live video on Periscope, YouTube, and also on Facebook. So if you're watching on the ice, best number there is, right? It's also in your Twitter handle at LindsayBrown35.
Yep.
So make sure you follow her. Lindsay is now part of the family here at CBS Sports Radio 1140. So make sure you do that. You're going to be doing all kinds of stuff. You're going to cover it all, right?
All of the sports, all of the time.
All the time.
Yes.
Yep.
And that's a good thing as we continue to grow here at CBS Sports Radio 1140, not only with our show, with Saturday Sports Beat with Tony Cardasco, lots of stuff coming up that we can't let you know about yet, but it's coming. And that's why Lindsay's here, and we're excited to have her here and have her talk some football with us today. All right, so on to the news. We got to start with this, right, guys? There's just no way we can avoid it. Andrew Luck retires. I get out of a movie yesterday, and I went see a movie with my boys and my wife, and I got out of the movie, and my phone's blowing up, and it's Chaz. And besides telling me about the best moisturizer to buy for my face, he's also telling Andrew Luck retired. And I'm thinking, okay, what is he reading The Onion? You know what? Andrew Luck retired. I knew Andrew Luck was hurt. Andrew Luck retires yesterday. And my first thought was, wow, of course, like everybody else, shock.
Unbelievable.
But at the same time, knowing what a smart guy is, and of course the injuries and everything, and watching the press conference yesterday, I just want to get your input, both of you, on this. I mean, Chaz, to see him retire yesterday, shocking, but yet anybody who's criticizing him, I think, is ridiculous, because here's a guy, 29 years old, almost 30, has the rest of his life ahead of him, and he says, look, I'm done. I don't have the passion. I'm tired of the injury.
It's his life, you know. He can do whatever he wants to do with it, man. We're not, just because he plays for our team or he plays for our sport doesn't mean we can tell him how to live his life. You know, it was weird. It kind of felt like the last few weeks felt like maybe Peyton Manning, what was that, 2011, when he had the neck problem, and you're like, what's kind of going on? And then, he ends up missing the season. I kind of started getting that feeling that maybe Andrew Luck was just going to miss the season with all these lingering and weird reports coming out.
There had been talk for weeks, right? I mean, everybody thought the injury was more serious. Now, Lindsay, in the scope of the NFL football, I mean, this is a big deal. This guy, one of my favorite quarterbacks, because, yes, he never got to the big game and never won the big game because of that injury stuff. But what a great guy, and what is he going to be remembered for besides this amazingly shocking retirement?
It's so weird because I don't think there was anybody that was anointed as high as he was, and RG3, because you remember they were in the same draft. They went 1-2, and then the Vikings quarterback Kirk Cousins went in a couple rounds later. But it's so weird how some of those draft years work out, where you have some of these incredible athletes, and he was seen as literally the next Peyton Manning that Indy just happened to luck into, and after Peyton left to go to Denver. So I think you're going to just remember him as an untapped talent, where it just, for some reason, he couldn't stay on the field, and that's not all of his fault. They did not put anybody in front of him in terms of an O-line in the first few years of his career. I mean, he already took an entire season off. I think that's what else sometimes we forget. He's been in this injury grinder for 5 seasons now.
Yeah, right.
I don't blame him. I've been there with injuries where you're just like, God, I don't want to go to the rink today. I'm not getting the same thing out of it where you're getting those positive reinforcement vibes and stuff like that. It's a smart play, but I could see him coming back in a couple years too.
Yeah, that's something that I think too, and I've got a lot of messages from folks around the league telling me the same thing, that don't be surprised if he takes a couple years off and then you find himself back because he is young. It's not like he had declining skills. We saw last year he was the comeback player of the year, did amazing work. The thing that bothers me most, and again, so the soapbox is out and I'm on it, is fans. Now, I'm not talking about the boos last night. That's an aberration. Overall, I think Colts fans are pretty good folks. But what bothers me are people in our culture in general, the sports culture, who just are so selfish and saying, oh, this is ridiculous. Now, I would agree with them. The timing is bad. Mm-hmm. Don't get me wrong. It really puts the Colts in a very difficult position, okay? But all of these fantasy football GMs who think they're real GMs, all these fans burning jerseys. It's like, come on. Seriously, is your life that ridiculous that you're going to burn somebody's jersey because he wants to choose to have a happy life? I mean, look, we all love sports. We're here talking about sports. We do it for a living. But at the same time, there's things outside of sports. And I just can't believe some of the ignorance that I'm seeing around this retirement.
Well, like I said earlier, it's his life. He's got to live his life. You see a lot of these old retired NFL guys, and they're walking around half crippled, and they can't move, and now all the problems with the head and the helmets. If he needs to go, he needs to go. Who are we to tell him what he's supposed to be doing? It's his life.
But I drafted him in my fantasy draft. Now, Lindsay, you played college sports. Mm-hmm. You had people yelling at you from the stands, I'm sure.
So many people yelling at me from the stands, all the fans. Yep.
I know, and I'm sure you have some great stories that we can't share on the air. But as an athlete, I mean, talk about this perspective. It's like no one knows what you go through on a daily basis, the aches, the pains, all of that stuff. So how can people be so critical of a guy who's choosing his health and his life and his mental health? At a time when we're talking about mental health, suddenly nobody cares.
Well, I think where people get into trouble is that everybody, I think, plays at least one sport when they're little, when they're lucky, when you're just like, we're going to try the sports out for the kids. And a lot of guys play football. A lot of girls play football when they're young. But we take those experiences that we have as a child, or as we move through Pee Wee football, through Pop Warner, through high school, or through hockey ranks like myself, and we compare it and be like, well, I worked hard when I was younger, and that's my memory with the sport. And so they do the same thing. It's just, a little bit harder, a little incremental, a little bit bigger people out there, slightly.
A little higher level.
But the big thing about injuries are that it's really hard to articulate as an athlete, especially when it comes to concussions and injuries that aren't as, publicly visible. Like when you break your leg, they put it in an air cast. You hobble around, people are like, he has a broken leg. He's obviously not doing anything.
Right.
But there is this pressure that even when you do have those obvious injuries, that you need to be pushing to the absolute limit in terms of recovery. And physically, you're pushing boundaries, but more importantly, you're pushing those boundaries mentally, which can really eat away at your confidence as a player, can eat away in your confidence as a person, and it's very isolating. It's very tough to kind of stay plugged into the team, especially somebody like Andrew Luck in the quarterback position that is seen as the leader, the leadership role. Yeah. And he's taken out of that.
And I agree. I mean, the timing, I think, is the issue. And if you're a fan and you say, gosh, the timing really sucks, I don't disagree with you. And if there's one critical point, but at the same time, if a guy's time is up and he's just had it and he can't give you all he's got and he mentally just isn't there, he doesn't have that passion for the game, do you really want him on the field and have him go through the motions? No, you don't. So I respect the heck out of Andrew Luck and applaud him for making the choice that's best for him. So we will congratulate him. And for Colts fans, I'm sorry, but that's the way it goes. All right, we're going to step aside, pay some bills. When we come back, we're going to get back to Raiders. We're going to talk Hard Knocks Episode 3 with Jesse Reed from Sports Not. You're listening to Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio, 1140.
Bourdain.
This is Mark Bedane, president of the Raiders. You're listening to Silver and Black Today.
All right, Mark Bedane, president of the Raiders, brings us back in here on Las Vegas's only All Raiders talk show, and that, of course, is the Silver and Black Today. We're going to shift gears now. We're going to talk about the week that was, and part of that conversation clearly is around Hard Knocks. Now, if you read our story up on the CBS Sports Radio 1140 website, we gave you our three thoughts, thoughts on episode 3 and what we like to see. But when it comes to the Hard Knocks series, we like to bring in an outside perspective, and that outside perspective comes from our good friend Jesse Reed over at sportsnaut.com, and we go out on the attorney Michael Troiano newsmaker line, and we bring Jesse in right now. Jesse, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
We are doing well. All right. And we enjoyed this episode of Hard Knocks, the third one. It seems to be getting better with each episode. Of course, it's been all AB all the time, but I really gave the NFL Films folks credit for this past episode, Jesse, because I felt like we were starting to get some more story. We met Luke Wilson, where if you read most 53-man rosters, everybody has him cut. I tend to be the opposite. But we also got the inside story on Darren Waller, which I think is a great story. Overall, what did you think of the episode, and what were your thoughts?
I thought that the Raiders looked really good overall. They, like you said, they got into some other personalities. It seems like Mike Mayock and John Gruden have put together a really interesting group of people, not just football players. The Darren Waller story was just tremendous. I've never really seen somebody open up like that, to be so honest and so candid on this kind of a stage when you're talking about NFL films. He's one of the most humble guys you'll ever see. He basically, when they were talking about the Madden rating, he's like, yeah, I haven't earned it. You know, it's pretty amazing. I mean, you can tell he's been working his tail off. You can tell he's hungry. John Gruden has been talking him up since the Raiders chose not to bring back Jared Cook. Yep. Seems like he's going to have a really big role within the offense, so fantasy owners take note there. The Luke Wilson angle was a lot of fun. It's pretty cool to see him and his dad interact, and I too also would love to see him make the roster. He's a really good all-around player. He can do some of the dirty work inside, and it seems like he fits in well with the team too. Of course, Antonio Brown is the centerpiece, and he will continue to be the centerpiece. And it was pretty interesting how incredibly embracing the players and coaches were in this episode, because as we've talked about in the past, it seems like HBO Films has been more focused on how he's been a part. We've talked about that a lot. And then all of a sudden he comes back and it's just like this huge party in practice. And they're just like hugging on him, embracing him, and big smiles everywhere. And it seems like that whole, all the negativity is a thing of the past. And obviously, I think John Gruden has a lot to do with that.
Yeah, and that's the thing I was going to say, Jesse. Again, we're talking to Jesse Reed from Sportsnaut about Hard Knocks Episode 3. And for Lindsay and Chaz here, too, that's the thing that I like what NFL Films has done here, is they very easily could have done, and I know my West Coast bias is going to come out when I blame the East Coast media for the negative side of things, but it just is what it is. We'll ask Mo about it later. But I just think they've done such a good job of showing actually how the team feels about it. Now, is some of that controlled? Absolutely. I think the Raiders and Mike Mayock and John Gruden are doing a masterful job of keeping it positive and keeping it as limited of a view as possible. They don't want to give too much away.
Right.
No, they are doing a great job.
Yep. So, Jesse, that's the other thing to me is I don't understand. There's been a lot. I saw Skip Bayless for one of them saying he couldn't believe how big John Gruden's ego is and how it's not going to end well for him there. Let me ask you a question. Watching Hard Knocks, watching John Gruden, how does somebody not, even if you don't like the Raiders and you want them to lose, how does somebody not like the personality and what he brings back to the sidelines in the NFL?
Well, first of all, it's pretty rich that Skip Bayless is calling somebody out for their ego. That's pretty funny to me. It seems like Gruden has the pulse on his team. You know, he's a really dedicated guy. He's probably one of the most knowledgeable coaches in the NFL. He studies. I mean, he's legendary for his work ethic. Shows up, 4 a.m. He pretty much lives there. He can talk their language. He has a big ego, but kind of you have to, don't you?
Exactly my point.
Job,
right?
You have to be that guy. You have to be the alpha. You have to be the vocal leader, and you're not going to take crap from anyone. And I think it's been a joy for me personally. I love watching this guy. His passion for the game is unrivaled. He brings so much life to every single thing that he puts himself in with the Raiders, and I think it's amazing what he's doing, perfectly honest.
Yeah, no, Jesse Reed from sportsnot.com joins us. And Jesse, no, I can appreciate that because you're looking at it from a very objective standpoint. And to me, when I look at what Hard Knocks has done, especially over the last few weeks, I think as folks who work in the media business and look at conveying stories, the storytelling the last few weeks has been amazing. And then catching the funny side of things, when you look at Gruden joking around with Tahir Whitehead about his six-pack and how he's past that at his age, right, walking around without the shirt off. And then also, Derek Carr having the funny moment with Hunter Renfrow and said, hey, what are you, Hunter, 37?
Yep.
Those types of moments, that's what the NFL wants with Hard Knocks. They want people to not only consume the product, if you will, but they want them to see people and like them more because of watching the show.
Yeah, they're bringing out the human element, which is fantastic.
They are. And for me, too, one of the other issues I thought they handled well was really the idea around Antonio Brown and getting – I don't know if you're outside the Pittsburgh zip codes, I don't see how you can look at Antonio Brown and say, well, this guy's an idiot and this guy's this. I think the humanizing of Antonio Brown has been another masterful job between the Raiders and NFL Films to actually bring people into a point where even if you don't quite understand how he burnt his feet in a cryotherapy chamber, you certainly feel for the guy, and you can't say he doesn't work hard.
Not even. I mean, the guy, that's the one thing that you could never question is his work ethic. It's pretty amazing to hear Gruden on the field before the game against Arizona telling one of the guys on his team, I give the guy credit for standing up for what he believes in. Everyone else in this country, it's been kind of angled to where and I will admit I kind of fell into it a bit too, that he's a troublemaker. But it seems like he's just maybe a quirky guy who has some really strong feelings about things, and when that's misunderstood, it can get blown out of proportion. The Raiders seems like they've done everything in their power to be sensitive to those needs, and they're just eager for him to feel comfortable so that he can produce like he can. And when he does that, he's prolific.
Yeah.
Yes, and there's limits to everything, right, Jesse? But we'll see. And we're going to have you back on next week to talk about Episode 4. Jesse Reed from Sportsnot talking to us about Hard Knocks. Jesse, thanks, man. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you for having me
Jesse.
on. You guys have a good day.
All right. That was Jesse Reed from Sportsnot. Okay, guys, so let's tie a bow on Hard Knocks Episode 3. But I thought the storytelling, again, great. I thought the Luke Wilson, of course, Luke Wilson to me looks like either Howard Stern or one of the Hanson brothers from Slapshot,
Yes.
which I thought was fun. And people were like, what's Slapshot? I'm like, oh, please stop.
Oh, boy. We have an education to go through here, my friends.
Yes. even my young sons, who a lot of the material's inappropriate, have seen most of it because they just have to. But I thought, Lindsay, you have a favorite part of Hard Knocks.
Uh-huh.
Why don't you Yeah, there you go.
I love the knock on wood when you're with me. I love it as a concept. I coached hockey back in Minnesota for a while, and it's a small thing, and I'm sure a lot of people are like, that's so dumb. But as a former athlete and as a coach, I'm like, that stuff to have an audible reminder every time you're talking to your team and having that we're all in this together
Keep
type of
everybody
thing.
focused.
Reading into it way too much for just being like, knock on wood if you're with me, guys. Like, it's really okay. But I don't know why John Gruden gets so much crap. People loved him on Monday Night Football. I think it's just because he's back with the Raiders.
Silver and black.
And it's just because the franchise has been a little bit of an S show for the last
17
ever.
years.
Yeah, exactly.
And with the Raiders, you love them or you hate them.
Yeah.
And so
Yep.
it's just one of those things.
It gives you a reason to love them or hate them.
Yeah. But John Gruden's done a great job of just balancing being a coach, being a mentor, being a father figure. And I think a lot of his years in the booth have actually helped him, be able to bring everything together and learn how to talk to which guy needs a pat on the butt, which guy needs a little motivation, which guy just needs to talk to.
Is that what you did to me earlier? Was that a pat?
Oh.
Okay. Anyway,
Hey now.
we are going
Go
to
team.
step aside and pay some bills. When we come back, we'll continue our Raider talk. We'll talk about the Packers game, the win, the come-from-behind win.
Yeah.
We'll talk about the neck. If you don't know who the neck is, we'll tell you. Most people do. You're listening to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
Las Vegas, meet Justin.
There's a ground ball in a tough spot. Bare hand Turner. What a play. Fair ball up the third baseline. No, and a spectacular play turned in by Turner. Looked like it was going to get past him, but no way. Turner robbing Machado. Payoff. Turner smashes another. He's got a 3-home run game.
Catch your Los Angeles Dodgers all summer long on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
I'm attorney Paul Powell. If you get hurt in a crash, did you know your lawyer can take more money than you? That's right. You get hurt and the lawyer gets rich. Not very fair, is it? When you hire me, those worries go bye, bye, bye. I promise never to take more money than you, and I put it in writing.
If you're tired of greedy lawyers, call 728-5500 or go to paulpowell.com.
I really can help.
Paul Powell.
More lawyer, less fee. Some restrictions apply.
When a bear is chasing you, you take off faster than a toupee in a fan factory. So hurry into the final days of the Ford Hurry Up and Save sales event. Come in and get 20% estimated savings on select 2019 Ford vehicles. This offer ends soon, and when we say soon, we mean September 3rd. So hurry up before pumpkin spice shows up in everything. Get to the final days of the Ford Hurry Up and Save sales event at your local Ford dealer. Eligible on select 2019 model year vehicles. Vehicle must have arrived at dealer at least 61 days prior to the sale date. Estimated savings include an average dealer discount based on a sales survey of average discounts offered by Ford dealers nationally. Discount may vary. Dealer determines price. For all offers, take new retail delivery from an authorized Ford dealer stock by 9/3/19. See participating dealer for complete details.
You own rental property and you want to get the most out of your investment so you can get the most out of life. That requires hassle-free property management. And managing your rental properties can be time-consuming and stressful. Renters Warehouse believes you deserve a partner who gets where you're coming from. They know real estate investments because their CEO has been a real estate investor since he bought his first duplex in college. And that ground-level understanding was the inspiration in creating a process that has helped over 50,000 real estate investors, from people who've inherited homes to sophisticated investors with over 1,000 properties. Today, Renters Warehouse manages over 22,000 homes across the country, making them the largest real estate investment company in America. Join the thousands and buy or sell your next rental on the Renters Warehouse online marketplace and experience stress-free property management today. Visit renterswarehouse.com and take advantage of their free rental property analysis. Renters Warehouse. List, invest, rent. All under one roof.
Triple-digit temperatures mean it's pool and lake season. This is Las Vegas Fire Chief William McDonald reminding you to stay safe around water at all times with a few helpful tips for the season. Lake time is a great time, but if you're going out on the water, make sure you've got life jackets for everyone on board. And if you've got guests under 12, theirs need to be on at all times. Together, we can make this a summer of safety. Brought to you by these fine sponsors.
City of Las Vegas Fire and Rescue, Dignity Health, St. Rose Dominican Hospitals, and Southern Nevada Toyota dealers. Do one thing to protect the environment. It all starts with just one thing. August is a great month to recycle. Start with paper, bottles, and cans. Also, reuse paper and plastic bags. Or better yet, get a reusable bag for groceries. Recycling can also help clear a lot of clutter from your home, like recycling old clothes by donating them to charity, and recycling all your old electronics like TVs, computers, and cell phones at appropriate e-waste facilities. It all starts with one thing. Find tips and more at onethingus.com. What's your one thing?
The only way to take Silver and Black today with you is with a radio.com app. Download it today and search CBS Sports Radio 1140 in Las Vegas and listen to us anytime, anywhere.
We are back here on the Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio 1140. We go back out on the very busy Attorney Michael Troiano Newsmaker line and bring on one of our favorite guys in the entire business, and that is Mr. Austin Gayle from Pro Football Focus. Austin, how are you? Are you ready for the season, my man?
Absolutely. I'm doing great. Thanks for asking.
Not that the season ever ends for you, because at Pro Football Focus, you guys are always working on something cool. All right, let's jump in on the Raiders, with the new NFL rules, with roster cuts basically coming at the end. What I wanted to do first was touch a little bit on the game we saw up in Winnipeg this past week on Thursday with the Raiders and get your take on who might have saved themselves a roster spot and who definitely did not when it came to the Raiders' come-from-behind win against the Packers. So, Austin, when it comes to guys that you now look at that you maybe were a little uncertain on whether they could be a shoo-in for a roster spot, who put that to bed? Who do you think now makes this roster from the Raiders' perspective?
I think you have to start with Keyshawn Nixon. He had an outstanding game in Winnipeg, and now he's earned a 79.8 overall grade through the preseason, playing over 100 defensive snaps. I think this kid has done a very good job in coverage in a secondary that needs all the help it can get. It needs depth across the board, and to kind of counter that with Nick Nelson, the second-year product out of Wisconsin, he's really struggled. Was picked on in Winnipeg, has been picked on this entire preseason, is really still adjusting to the speed of the NFL. I think Keyshawn might have, usurped him in getting a spot on this team. I think he's played very well. He's, allowed very few receptions in coverage, limited big gains, while on the other hand, Nelson's been penalized, allowed big receptions, allowed touchdowns. I really think it would be interesting to see if the Oakland Raiders move on from Nixon in favor of Nelson, just given what we've seen in the preseason.
All right. Again, we're talking to Austin Gayle from Pro Football Focus. Couldn't agree with you more on Nick Nelson. I was hard on him on Twitter because I really liked him last year. I don't think he's ever gotten past the injury. He when you're injured and you lose that step and then you got to try to come back, jumping from college to the NFL makes it really difficult, Austin. But I agree with you there. When you look at the rest of this team, to me, the biggest question mark of all, because of the trade of Kelechi Osemele in the offseason and what was happening there, of course, is the offensive line. When you look at that offensive line now, Austin, there's some guys, they went out and they signed some free agents, veterans. They have some young guys like Brandon Parker, obviously, who Raider fans seem to not like. I think he's going to be there. But when that offensive line, I think it's performed better than I anticipated. What's your take so far on the offensive line?
They have been playing better, and I think obviously you don't have a lot. The starters aren't playing a ton. Richie Incognito only has 6 offensive snaps this preseason. But looking at some of the backups, you have to be impressed with what they've been able to do. I think Devy is a guy that comes up. He's been outstanding in pass protection, an 83.8 pass blocking grade at guard for the Oakland Raiders. He's struggled in the run game, but so has pretty much everyone else. Brandon Parker, on the other hand, hasn't had the best of preseasons. Has really struggled in pass protection specifically. You don't like where he's at currently. Fortunately for the Raiders, they'll be starting Trent Brown in his spot this season. But I think Devy has performed above expectation. I think the ball is coming out quicker in this Raiders offense, which is exciting. I think average time to throw is just as important, if not more important, for the success of an offensive line. You need to be able to get the ball out quickly to avoid situations where you're having a quarterback hold the ball on longer and need plays to develop behind an offensive line that is lackluster in talent. Yes, I like Rodney Hudson. I think Trent Brown will come in and play well, but Colton Miller still has a lot to prove. They're going to be without Richie Incognito for the first few games. I do think this ball needs to come out quickly. Derek Carr is very good at that, but the offense needs to scheme around that. John Gruden needs to understand that. Get the ball in space to some of these skill players, hopefully Antonio Brown in week 1. I think this offensive line overall will have more success.
Yeah, you mentioned Antonio Brown and the wide receivers. I feel like this whole preseason's kind of been a showcase for the wide receiver core. And, now we've got to make a cut down. Keelan Doss has really stood out to me, an Alameda guy. For me, looking at it from maybe a front office perspective and a PR move, that's somebody I would keep. For you, which one of these receivers has kind of stood out, and who do you think is going to make it, and who do you think won't?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think Tyrell Williams is going to have to assume a large role, even if Antonio Brown comes in and plays week 1. And Tyrell Williams needs to be a quality number 2. Keelan Doss has had an outstanding preseason. I would be very surprised if they move on from him, especially because he's a local product. You can fall in love with the story, and then when the story matches up with production on the field, it's very difficult to move on from a kid like that. And they've been giving DeMornay Pearsonell a lot of reps, special teams. I think this coaching staff values special teams ability, and he's had some success on the offensive side of the ball. Again, you can't keep everyone, but there is a lot of talent in this receiving core, at least from a speed perspective, and obviously special teams value. In terms of guys maybe they'd have to move on from in order to kind of make a move like this, I think Marcel Aitman has left a lot to be desired. I know he was a fan favorite this past season as a rookie, but the 7th rounder really hasn't delivered this preseason. I could see him potentially being the odd man out with others playing well.
Well, in Austin, so much, again, talking to Austin Gayle from Pro Football Focus, so much has been made, of course, and we don't want to kick the proverbial dead horse. But when it comes to Antonio Brown, you watch Hard Knocks, you get a little bit of the other side of the story, and it seems like his teammates, everyone's rallied around it. You had the one Mike Mayock ultimatum, which I wrote, worked. It allowed him to be the kind of disciplinarian. It allowed Gruden to remain close to his player and do what he needs to do, which is motivate him. When you look at Antonio Brown, I expect, injury aside, anything like that, I expect him and Carr to click and to have a big year. But what's the perception out there now after this has kind of started to unfold and we're starting to get through now the second helmet grievance? But is there still major concern that Antonio Brown is going to be a problem in Oakland?
It's hard. It's really hard to speculate on the subject. I think if Antonio Brown plays, he will be very good for this team. If he doesn't, he won't be very good for this team, I think. And I don't have enough information to know whether or not he'll play. I think signs are pointing to that he'll get beyond this helmet grievance, wear a helmet, and suit up week 1. But you can't be sure. I mean, given what you've seen, you can't be sure. I think Antonio Brown, if he does make it onto the field, for every play he's there, this offense is significantly better. And for every play he's not, it is terrible. Like, no chance. I mean, Tyrell Williams is the number 1 receiver receiving double coverage with the other guys filling in, inexperienced guys that can't really deliver like an Antonio Brown can. This offense will struggle. I think John Gruden knows that. You see that in the Hard Knocks episodes. He knows how valuable Antonio Brown is to this team if they are going to put points on the board. And if Derek Carr is going to have any chance at proving this coaching staff that he's worth taking to Vegas. I really do think Antonio Brown, a lot sits on him playing in week 1 and beyond.
Hey, Austin, Lindsey Brown here. Just switching to the other side of the ball, there's been a lot of time spent on Jonathan Abram, the rookie for the Raiders, on Hard Knocks in the last 3 weeks. What do you think the Raiders are going to do to harness that energy? Because he seems like a little bit of a loose cannon sometimes, but, I mean, that's what you're looking for as on the defensive side, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think playing him in the box is one thing who's been fantastic. I think allowing him to get down in the box, be run support, is what's going to play to his strengths. The problems with Jonathan Abram's game are not so much his hard-hitting ability and his ferociousness. It's really, can he play the deep safety in space and have that closing speed to cover? I think we saw problems from him at Mississippi State, similar to what we saw problems with Keanu Neal of the Atlanta Falcons. He's great in the box, a very hard-hitting safety in the box, but when he moves out in space to play that deep free spot, he can struggle with that closing speed and range. I think they're playing him in the right spot right now, but it'll be interesting to see if Jonathan Abram's role is expanded, because I think he will struggle to adjust to the speed of the NFL if he does play a lot more deep free safety.
All right, Austin Gayle. Thanks, man. We appreciate you being with us. Of course, check out Austin Gayle on Twitter. That's PFF_Austin Gayle. And, of course, Pro Football Focus. We'll talk to you later in the season, Austin. I appreciate it, my man.
Sounds great. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks,
that was Austin Gayle. And, guys, I mean, hard to really disagree with anything Austin said there. I mean, he knows his stuff, and I think we all have opinions. But where this Raiders roster is going into the last preseason game on Thursday against the Seahawks, what a difference from last year.
Oh.
And it shows you why Gruden wanted to remake the roster.
Yep.
And yes, we won't talk about Khalil Mack because people get too emotional. But the point is,
I would too.
Yeah, exactly. He's such a great player. But the point is, it just seems like this team is much more together than last year, and you see it on the field.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, and Hard Knock in the third episode of Hard Knocks this year. Even Derek Carr, he went up to John Gruden and said, "Hey, I can see these seams, these concepts. I can see kind of a different,
great point.
Above the field type thing." Now that they've really saturated and sat in with a full season with Gruden, you're going to see these guys picking up these little things that were going to be missed last year, just because everybody's getting to know each other, getting to know the system. Yep. I think they're a sneaky dark horse team for me right now. I don't think they're going to beat the Chiefs for the division, but they could challenge.
Yeah, they're going to win a few more games than everybody thought. But just the talent level is so much better than it was last year, too.
Yeah, and it just seems the guys he wants, the type of players he wants, are there. All right, we're going to step aside when we come back. We'll talk about Canada, right? Not hockey, Lindsay, but we're going to talk about terrible fields and the debacle that was Thursday night with the Raiders up in Winnipeg, a good football town, but obviously it wasn't ready for prime time with the NFL. You're listening to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
Las Vegas. Dodgers all summer long on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
The law office of Michael A. Troiano is a proud supporter of all things Las Vegas, including its people, specializing in legal representation for all criminal defense matters ranging from misdemeanors to the most serious felonies. Attorney Michael Troiano provides clients with the legal strategy and professional representation needed in court. If you or a loved one find yourself in a legal situation and need a tough defense on your side, Michael Troiano can help. Call now for a free consultation, 702-843-5500, or learn more at TroianoVegasLaw.com.
Triple-digit temperatures mean it's pool and lake season. This is Las Vegas Fire Chief William McDonald reminding you to stay safe around water at all times with a few helpful tips for the season. Grown-up supervision means grown-ups that know what to do in an emergency. Make sure someone in your group knows CPR because every second matters. Together, we can make this a summer of safety. Brought to you by these fine sponsors.
City of Las Vegas Fire and Rescue, Dignity Health, St. Rose Dominican Hospitals, and Southern Nevada Toyota dealers.
Heading to Toyota's national clearance event. We got great deals for all our friends. The event's on now, but you gotta remember, these offers are valid till the 3rd of September. So better get here before the end of the song. The last of the 2019s won't last long.
During Toyota's national clearance event, get $1,000 cash back on the all-new 2019 Toyota RAV4 Hybrid. For great deals on other Toyotas, visit Toyota.com. Toyota, let's go places. Participating dealers only.
Cashback savings from Toyota Motor Sales USA Inc. does not include college grad or military rebate. Must be applied to the transaction. No cash payment will be made to consumer. Varies by region. See dealer for details.
Visit your Southern Nevada Toyota dealer. Or for more information, please log on to Toyota.com. Toyota, let's go places.
Napa know-how. Why should you get a 5-quart jug of Napa conventional oil plus a Pro Select oil filter for $15.99? Because the dog days of summer are just as hard on your engine as they are on you. So get your 5-quart jug of Napa conventional oil plus a Pro Select oil filter for just $15.99. Quality parts, helpful people. That's Napa know-how. Napa know-how. General States pricing. Sales prices do not include applicable state, local taxes, or recycling fees. Offer ends 8/31/19.
Technology Truths, brought to you by Geico.
Technology truths.
Truth. Teenagers can communicate entirely in emojis.
How was the birthday party? Pizza slice, kitten, soccer ball, pineapple?
Truth. It's so easy to switch and save on car insurance at Geico.com.
What are you talking about? Paperclip, shoulder shrug, high five, wizard hat?
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Las Vegas's original food and music festival is Bite of Las Vegas, Saturday, September 14th at the Downtown Las Vegas Event Center, featuring live music by Rob Thomas, Smith & Myers of Shinedown, and James Arthur. Midway games, carnival rides, and food from restaurants across the valley. Tickets on sale now through Ticketmaster.com. Get your $5 off discount code at participating Las Vegas area McDonald's. Bite of Las Vegas, September 14th. Sponsored by Coors Light, Southern Nevada Toyota Dealers, Smirnoff Vodka, and the Downtown Las Vegas Event Center.
The Dodgers take on the Yankees this afternoon at 3 on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
This is Silver and Black Today, live on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
Welcome back to the Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140. Thank you all for being with us. As I always say, without you, we don't exist. There's no doubt about that. Well, without my parents, too, I guess I wouldn't exist. But we are back, and we are talking Raiders football. We talked a little bit about the Andrew Luck retirement, the unexpected retirement, but we are focused now on the Raiders. I am joined today by co-host Lindsey Brown and Chaz Osborne. And guys, I was very concerned because over the last several weeks, our good friend Wally had not called in. And so I assumed he might have been on vacation. Wally from Henderson is back on the air with us on the phone. Wally, please tell me you didn't get locked in a cryotherapy chamber.
Nah, dude, I was down in your old stomping grounds. Went down to San Diego for a while and just been doing a lot of swimming. And then that short show, there wasn't much room to fit in. So,
oh man,
any real Raider fan doesn't listen to the media or what the media has to say. All they love to do is just hate on us, hate on Gruden. I even heard some idiot about that stupid 80-yard field, and they're going, oh, that was such a Raider thing. The Raiders had nothing to do with that.
Yeah, that's true.
But they just all love to pile on, and then that complete moron Bayless, anybody even listens to that idiot should be sent to a mental institution.
Yep. Oh, my goodness.
But, yeah, it's been a busy summer, man, doing a lot of swimming. And
good, man. You deserve it. I know you work hard. And you know what? I have to agree with you there. As someone who didn't grow up a Raider fan, right, there's a lot of dislike of the Raiders, primarily because of the history and, of course, the perceived kind of bad boy, rough image and all that. Some of it was accurately acquired back in the day in the 70s and 80s. But at the same time, Lindsey and Chaz, I look at it as if I'm a coach and I'm building a young roster, right, and I want my guys to be motivated, I like the us against the world approach.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I went to UNLV. I Coach Tarkanian used it his entire career, and it worked really well. But you guys agree with me on that one? And Wally, thank you for the call, brother.
All right, man. Have a good day.
You too.
Yeah, I'm 100% on board with the why not us, why not now. It's so that it helps you kind of keep the rest of the voices out, really focus your team on that singular goal of being successful, whether everybody says it's a Super Bowl every year. That's not necessarily true. I think the Raiders would be very happy with making the playoffs.
Yep.
And so you're working towards that goal, and that's what's important. The way you do that is you get nobody likes us. Nobody wants to prepare for us. Nobody believes in us, and that's easy to get that rallying call together, especially with a big team like a football team.
And we've seen it. We've seen it on Hard Knocks. We've seen John Gruden, and he's masterful at it. He's really getting everybody motivated. He's getting everybody on the same page. It's a process. We know that it's going to take a while, and I think he's doing a great job with it.
Trust the process.
Yeah, I mean, don't you guys agree? I mean, to get that Raider swagger back, right? I mean, the brand means something, and that love to hate the Raiders thing, that's valuable, is it not?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Raiders, there's a lot of teams, Yankees, Lakers, you either love them or you hate them, and the Raiders are one of those teams. They're not just a middle-of-the-road Green Bay Packers. We kind of, you root for them here.
I like that. I like what you're saying there. I like that. They're middle-of-the-road Packers team. I like it. Yep.
But it's true, and the Raiders are one of those teams. You either love them or you hate them, and so that's why you hear all the national media, and they blow a lot of things out of proportion for shock value. You hear all these people talking things, and it's nonsense. And like Wally said, it's a great point. Raider fans know not to listen to that nonsense. We're focused on one thing, and being Raider fans, getting back to those old glory days and getting back to where we belong, and the echelon of the NFL teams.
Well, and I think there's fair conversation around the Raiders as far as their performance or lack thereof over the last couple decades.
Yeah.
And so when the media talk, I think Raider fans are really ultra sensitive sometimes about it, and I get why. I get it. I get the us against the world thing, and that's okay. That's fine. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that to me, sometimes it comes out when you're like I am, where you try to be objective and realistically talk about, like, for example, the Raiders' win total this year. 6.5 is set by the line in Vegas.
Really?
I bet the under. Okay. So now with what happened yesterday with Andrew Luck and the fact that the Raiders are going to play, and now I have a Chick-fil-A dinner bet with Kelly because he won't go for a steak bet.
I'll take your steak bet.
Yeah, there you go. I said, look, now that Andrew Luck's gone, now I see the Raiders as a 7-8 win team. I really do. After seeing them in the preseason, the schedule is just so tough. Chaz and I are going to London. We're doing our show from there, and we're going to see that trip as two guys doing a radio show and how exhausting it is. And I just think the schedule is the big thing. But that said, I think the optimism is good. I think there's more optimism for Raider fans, Lindsay, right now than there has been maybe since 2016, and really long term, and at the future of the organization with the stadium here in Las Vegas, everything more so than there has been really since the early 90s.
Well, and I think they're in as good of a position as you could be in the NFL, because we like to say we know which teams are going to be good each and every year. But the thing is, last year's success rarely carries over to the next season, and they weren't in the top 2 of the division. I think that's where you get those tough schedules, where the Chiefs are going to play a tough schedule. All the division winners are going to play a tough schedule. The Raiders do have a challenging one, but they have one that they could take advantage of. And I think that's where that defense, that's really going to be telling, because I think the offense is a little bit more ahead of in their progression in terms of getting used to each other, running those systems. But they could sneak up on some people. They are not that dissimilar from the Vikings a couple of years ago when they lost their starting quarterback and the Raiders still have theirs. They made it to the NFC Championship game with Case Keenum. I don't want to always compare everything to the Vikings, but I'm just saying that people didn't expect that from that team, and that's what made it so fun. And ever since then, it hasn't been so fun because there have been expectations.
Right. I think it might come down to, you're talking about the 6.5. It might come down to that last Denver Broncos game, the last game of the season in Denver. And I think the Raiders might be sitting on 6 wins.
I'd take the over. I really would. I really would.
Depending on what happens with the Broncos, I got a feeling that they're probably going to bring in that young quarterback for those last few games. So the Raiders will probably get that last win and end up with 7. And you're in trouble.
Well, as much as Raider fans don't want to hear about the Donkeys, I think their defense is going to keep them in a lot more games than people think. Anyway, we're going to step aside for the top of the hour sports break. And then when we come back, Moe Moton from Bleacher Report would join us. He's going to give us his look at the 53. We'll be back right after this.
You found the most in-depth coverage of the Silver and Black. The nation and the league arrive in Las Vegas in 2020. Live from the CBS Sports Radio 1140 studios, it's Silver and Black Today. Join the conversation by calling 702-889-5978. And now, here's your host, Scott Gobranson.
Welcome back to Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140 in Las Vegas. Hey, reminder, we're going to London, baby. We want you to go with us. London 2019.silverandblacktoday.com. Our partner Travelbee, you can book your travel there, get your tickets. Join us as we pub crawl. I'll walk. I think Chaz might be crawling by the evening.
Chaz Osborne, Silver and Black Today.
Definitely be crawling over there.
I love that clip.
Raider Nation gets over there. When Raider Nation gets to another country, they start to party, man.
That's later in the evening. All right, we are now going out on the attorney Michael Troiano newsmaker line and bringing in one of our favorite guys, mostly because he agrees and knows that pineapple does not belong on pizza, and that is Mr. Moe Moton from Bleacher Report. We're going to talk about Raiders roster. Mo, you just dropped a piece yesterday, right, on the 53-man roster as you see it. And so we want to run through that, but thanks for joining us this morning, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Just up late with the Andrew Luck news.
I'm
not going to get on my soapbox about that. If you want to read about my stance, just read my tweets. I tied it to Derek Carr, how people were calling Derek Carr soft when the cry face picture came out. And can we just do one thing? Let's just stop questioning NFL players' stuff. That's all I ask.
Seriously.
Yeah, when most people are having trouble even working out a few times a week, and these guys are going out there putting their bodies, their heads on the line, and the guy retires so he can live a long and fruitful life the way he wants to lead it. Imagine that. And I don't know if it was you, Mo, but somebody tweeted out, at a time when we're talking about head injuries and mental health, where we have players like Brandon Marshall, the receiver Brandon Marshall, who's done so much to try to bring awareness of that. Here's a guy trying to physically help himself and mentally help himself, and people are criticizing him.
Right. And that was actually what I was alluding to on Twitter, and I was saying, every day you look on Twitter and they say mental health awareness is important. It's very important. And then you get people booing Andrew Luck, and it's like, it's important but you can't mess up my football team. You got to have my football team go to the Super Bowl. Other than that, I do care about your mental health, but you got to get us to the Super Bowl. It's like, it's very selfish. It's a very selfish outlook.
No, it is. And hey, listen, I love playing fantasy football, okay? But I don't take it that seriously. There are some people, I think, who take this stuff more seriously. It's like, these are human beings. They're not just names on a paper. So I agree with you 100%, Mo. Okay, let's shift to the Raiders. Now, your last story on NFL Fansided, you took a crack at the 53-man roster, and I want to start with the offensive side of the ball. Surprisingly, you have Derek Carr at quarterback 1. No, I'm just kidding. But you look at the quarterback situation, no surprise there. Glennon at number 2, Peterman at 3. What have you seen from Peterman, perhaps? I mean, Peterman tends to be a joke for people, but the reality is he's a developing player. But what did you see from him in this preseason that maybe gave you some hope or some pause?
I know he had the Michael Vick-esque run in the first preseason game, and a lot of people had some joy in that. But I think that game-winning drive he had in Winnipeg on that 80-yard field, I think that made Gruden think a little bit. Say, maybe we can develop this guy into a solid backup player. Now, I know we didn't see Glennon really, but you got to understand that when John Gruden said Nathan Peterman is growing on me, as you said, everyone kind of chuckled about that. But I think he really told the truth about that. And I think you can really see that there are some developmental parts in that maybe you can get more out of him. And I think he's going to have to play well in this last preseason game to solidify that spot. But I think that game-winning drive said about him, even though he didn't drive into the end zone, Dawes had a drop there. But just getting the offense down the field and getting that kick to win the game, I think was a big thing for him.
Okay, let's. Oops, sorry, I almost spilled water all over your chest.
Do you see them? You see them keeping all 3 quarterbacks, or maybe just shifting one down to the practice squad?
Yeah, I think they're going to actually keep all 3 quarterbacks. Gruden did say that they asked him about it after the game, and he said, I may keep 2, or like last year, I may keep 3. And I think Peterman has done enough to really make Gruden think about keeping a 3rd quarterback.
Yep. All right, Mo. So let's keep running through this on offense and the roster projection. We're not going to hit every single name, but I just want to get some. At running back, you have Josh Jacobs, Doug Martin. I get criticized a lot for thinking Doug Martin's going to make the team. Jalen Richard and Keith Smith. You have Alec Ingold, James Butler, Mac Brown out, and you say there's a possibility DeAndre Washington could be traded.
Yeah, so that my running back projections are going to be off because right before I got on the air with you guys, Tom Pelissero of NFL Network said that Doug Martin's been released. So that probably means that DeAndre Washington is going to stay. Alec Ingold, a lot of people like Alec Ingold. I love Alec Ingold too. I think he's a keeper, but you got to understand that Keith Smith is a Rich Bisaccia guy, and he played well in that last game. He had 4 catches out of 4 targets, 15 yards and a touchdown. A lot of people don't want Keith Smith on the roster because they remember he dropped that pass in that Denver game that could have won the Raiders the game. But again, just like fans do, fans don't want to hear this, but coaches also have their favorites. And Keith Smith has experience with Bisaccia back in the days for the Cowboys. Same goes for Dwayne Harris. But again, my running back projection is going to be off because Doug Martin is no longer with the team.
Wow, breaking news. I did not even know that. Here I am trying to defend myself on my Doug Martin.
You just gave yourself a pat on the back.
Thanks, Mo. No, but no, I get that. It makes sense. Wide receivers, this is the group that we've talked a lot about here on the show, Mo, because to me it was a great problem for the Raiders to have. They've had some really talented guys who've really stepped up. You have, of course, Antonio Brown, Williams, Hunter Renfrow, J.J. Nelson, and Keelan Doss. J.J. Nelson's an interesting. That's the only one that surprised me. I thought maybe Grant, because of the history there, or Hatcher may take that spot. Why J.J. Nelson?
I guess because I'm a little, I don't want to say biased, but I'm a little jaded after watching Ryan Grant play for the Colts last year. Ryan Grant had a prime opportunity to be the number 2 wide receiver on that roster with Andrew Luck healthy, and he didn't close the deal. And his snap count dropped off as the year went on. And I just don't think he brings anything unique or special to the wide receiver group. J.J. Nelson is a pure burner. I know Antonio Brown is fast, Pharrell Williams is fast, but J.J. Nelson ran, I believe, a 4.28 at his combine. And if his hands are reliable as we've seen in glimpses, that speed and hands combination could be lethal in that offense. And I'm one of those people who feel like the Raiders' defense is going to be far behind the offense. They're going to have to put up a lot of points, and I think big chunk plays are going to be important for this offense. So I think J.J. Nelson gets the nod over Ryan Grant.
And you think Keelan Doss has done enough on the field, or do you think it's his backstory that might get him to stay on the team?
I mean, we've watched Hard Knocks. We all know he's an Alameda kid, went to Alameda High School. I think that plays a little part in it. But he has performed well on the field. He's led the Raiders in catches, 11 catches and yards, 99 yards. Through the preseason. I think he's a pretty good talent. Someone said on Twitter yesterday that he reminds them of Amari Cooper. I wouldn't go that far. He is wearing number 89, but I wouldn't take it that far. But I think he's done enough to make the roster because he's made plays in virtually every game in the preseason.
Apparently I should turn my mic on. Hey, Mo, this is Lindsey Brown here. Just wanted to ask you about the tight end situation. We saw Darren Waller a lot on episode 3 of Hard Knocks and kind of his development, but that position has never been more important in the league. Where do you see the Raiders moving in that direction for that position?
Lindsey, I don't want to go into too much about Darren Waller because he is my fantasy football sleeper. So I don't want to give that out.
Keep that tight to the vest.
I will say that he's going to get a lot of looks, and I think he's going to be that Jared Cook type player where he's going to get a lot of targets in the passing game. How good of a complete tight end he will be, we don't know because he did just switch over from tight end, wide receiver to tight end when he was with the Ravens. But I think he's going to get a lot of looks. He's going to get opportunities to prove himself as a pass catching tight end.
Yeah,
Baltimore Ross plays the lock because he's the 4th round pick.
Yeah, Derek Carrier, Luke Wilson. He has so much to offer. You have him as one of the names out, but we'll see what happens there. Lastly, Mo, and we'd love to hold you over for a second segment if you can do it with us to talk about defense, since we've talked so much about offense. But on the offensive line, the one guy that I just haven't seen it, where you and I disagreed when I put my roster out the last few days, which is Jonathan Cooper. Tell me why you think he's going to make it. I've actually, and I think I'm the only one who's said it, so maybe I'm just drinking the wrong Kool-Aid. But I thought Cotton has actually played pretty well. Why do you think Cooper? Is it because of the experience and where he came from?
Right. I think it's generally because of the experience. And remember, he was a former first-round pick, I believe, in 2013.
Yep.
I think when it comes down to protecting your quarterback on the interior, when you got a guy like Chris Jones in week 2, You're gonna have Bradley Chubb and Von Miller in week 1, probably trying to cross inside to put pressure on Carr. You want an experienced guy in there. Lester Cotton comes in as a rookie undrafted pick, and again, Gruden, as we all know, Gruden loves veterans, but I think again you want an experienced guy who's actually been in the pressure cooker and can handle that pressure in there. Keep in mind, Richie Incognito suspended for 2 games. Gabe Jackson's going to be out. He's going to probably on PUP or IR. Those guys don't count against the 53-man roster. So I think Jonathan Cooper definitely gets in.
Well, yeah, and I think part of the offseason, or I should say the preseason, to me, the biggest story and the story that should make Raider fans feel really good is the fact that offensive line, even though it's been patched together, has played really, really well. So when you get it back at full strength, and if you can get Colton Miller to take that jump that you like to see from year 1 to year 2, that unit has, I think, the possibility, Mo, of really being special as the year goes on.
Yeah, absolutely. And if it is even decent, I think that's when you're going to see a top 10 offense for the Raiders. If they can protect Carr can get the ball to weapons like Antonio Brown, Terrell Williams, Josh Jacobs out of the backfield, Hunter Hall of Fame Renfro. Those guys are going to get a lot of opportunities if he has time to throw the ball.
That's right. Well, Mo, we've run through the offense. We're going to hold you over during the break, and Mo's going to come back with us, and we will talk about the defense. There's some question marks over on the defense, especially when you look at things like the defensive backs, which the Raiders have needed help for years and years. And we talked a little bit about Keyshawn Nixon before. We also talked about Darion Conley, his development, and so on. So we're going to get more from Mo on that. Moe Moton from Bleacher Report joins us. You're listening to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
They say memories are made at the ballpark.
Oh, man, my favorite baseball memory is as a kid walking into the stadium and seeing the baseball field for the first time.
How you doing? This is Charlie Garner, and you're listening to Silver and Black Today. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to the Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio. Yes, we're back.
With Mo.
And we're back with Mo. Hey, Mo. And we are talking about the Raiders' 53-man roster. Mo's great story on his projections for the Raiders roster and the final 53. We talked about the offense before the break, and now we are back, and we're going to talk about the defense. All right. So, Mo, when we look at that defensive line, we'll start at defensive end. Some of the names that we've heard, a couple guys like James Cowser, Alex Barrett, you say they're gone, along with rookie Quentin Bell, and a guy that you have making the team. And I know we were tweeting about this during the game because I really love this kid. I think he's earned it, and that is Anthony Rush.
Yeah, I absolutely think Anthony Rush makes the roster. I actually have a separate piece on him on Bleacher Report. He's one of my breakout performers during the preseason. That should be a regular season contributor. He has a great get off the ball. He's about 6'5", 350 pounds. I believe, though, if he makes the roster, that puts Justin Ellis in jeopardy. I feel like he can either be traded. It would be hard to cut him because I believe his contract, his 2019 salary was guaranteed in the third day of the league year. So I believe they're going to try to trade him. And if they can't trade him, then he may stay, and it'll make the roster a little more tougher to make. And maybe they keep 6 interior guys, who knows. But I think you have to keep Anthony Rush based on what he's done during the preseason. Again, he's not going to get you the high sack numbers, but he's going to help the Raiders patch up their run defense, which I believe was 30th last year, somewhere bottom barrel. So you need that guy. You need that type of player in the middle, clogging up and corralling ball carriers on the run.
I feel like one of the big question marks the whole preseason has kind of been the linebackers, the linebacking core. One of the names that you have out that kind of jumps out is Jason Kabinda. Now, I thought he was playing really well. He was bringing great energy. What was your reason for leaving him out?
I actually like Jason Kabinda, too. I thought he could have been one of those undrafted guys that blossomed under Paul Gunther, who's known for developing running backs out of the blue. But when you think about it, the Raiders did add 2 veteran linebackers, Devontae Burfict and Brandon Marshall. And if those 2 guys make it, it's going to make it hard for a guy on the back end to make the roster again. So I had Jason Kabinda out. I think they're really trying to work on Markel Lee. He tried to get an interception in the last game, dropped it.
Yep.
He shed weight. Gunther stressed to him that he needs to be able to cover in the AFC West. And you got Hunter Henry, you got Travis Kelce in that division. You got Noah Fant, who's a rookie but known for his pass catching.
Yep.
The linebackers have to be able to cover, and I think that's going to be a weak spot for the Raiders. They have a veteran crew, but I'm not so sure about their coverage skills. But I have Jason Kabinda out, and I have Vontaze Burfict and Brandon Marshall in.
Yep.
Yeah, interesting take there, and I don't disagree at all. If you look at the defensive backs, Mo, and of course Garyon Conley, Darryl Worley, Marcus Joyner, Mullen, Isaiah Johnson you had in there as well. And, of course, Nixon, Abram, Joseph, Eric Harris. You have Nick Nelson out. That's probably the easiest one, is it not? I mean, Nick Nelson, again, a guy I really liked as a pick to take a flyer on to see if they could get him to work through that knee injury and really come back from what was an injury that hurt him in the draft. But still, he just never really turned that corner. We never really saw from him what we thought he could be, and clearly against Green Bay, it was a nightmare for him.
Yeah, and I'm just, Nick Nelson is a guy like a lot of people wanted to see what he can do, and he had a rough outing in Winnipeg. Really quick, if people who know me know I love toast. I love toast, but I don't want it if it's in the corner. I don't want it if it's cornerback in my secondary.
Yep.
And he looked pretty bad in that last game. I think that's really going to hurt him. Nevin Lawson is going to be suspended for 4 games, so he won't kind of get disrupted if the Raiders decide to keep him. But one guy I've really come on to is Keyshawn Nixon. I think, and I made this point on Twitter, the Raiders are going to see Patrick Mahomes in week 2. So you need cornerbacks who are ready to play. Trayvon Mullen has missed the last 2 games. Isaiah Johnson, as you mentioned, had a concussion in the first game. We haven't seen him since, so I wonder if the Raiders are going to try to put him on a pup or something like that. But I think Keyshawn Nixon has a decent chance to get in.
Yeah, Mo, I agree with that. And of course, on special teams, Dwayne Harris, the kick returner, punt returner, Daniel Carlson, who I said last year was going to be the long-time kicker at the Raiders, just a great pickup by them. A.J. Cole, who surprised everybody, made us talk more about punters than I think I've ever done before. Now, the one thing I wanted to ask you, Mo, before we let you go here in a few minutes, was really about the Raiders on the offensive line, because there's been a lot of conversation around the Raiders maybe trying to look to make a trade there or pick up. But here's my point on it is, number one, they played so well in the preseason, I don't think you need to, especially when you have Incognito coming back after 2 games. You have Jackson coming back sometime in October, most likely. First of all, there's nobody out there, I don't think. And number two, whatever you're going to pay a lot, and that sets back your program. Why would you do it? You agree with me on that one?
Yeah, I sort of, in a way. But what I will say is you know Richie Incognito is going to come back after 2 games. Now, they expect Gabe Jackson back. They said that they gave him a 2-month time period. But you just never know with those injuries, so you want to have some insurance just in case they're not too much in love with what they have. I know Denzel Good is back off the pup, which is huge because he had back surgery. I think if they feel confident in Denzel Good playing, then they don't really need a trade. But if they're worried that Denzel Good may not be all the way back yet from that lower back surgery, then I think they could still fish around for a trade at guard.
Interesting. What about now? We also hear other things, of course, the Clowney situation in Houston. I don't think the Raiders play there. But do you see them making any other moves besides the ones that you talked about, of course, with perhaps trading, which we now know because after I defended Doug Martin and then you've, of course, told me that he'd been cut. Thank you for that. DeAndre Washington, I think, will end up staying with the team. But do you look at any other positions that they might end up going out and trying to find either somebody who gets cut or someone they could trade for?
I mean, I'll go with the guy they should pick up. The Green Bay Packers released Josh Jones, who's a safety.
Mm-hmm.
He's a hitter. He can also cover, though. I think the safety position is a little thin if you're considering LaMarcus Joyner as a cornerback. They can get a guy that can rotate with Carl Joseph, Eric Harris, and, of course, Jonathan Abram. I would look into that. Of course, I would love for the Raiders to pick up another pass rusher because I think their pass rush is still questionable. But if you're looking at a Jadeveon Clowney, the Texans are looking for a left tackle, and the Raiders don't really have that an expendable left tackle to give up. I know a lot of people have made jokes about Brandon Parker going to the Texans, and who says no? They're not going to take Brandon Parker. They're going to have to give up a first-round pick to even consider getting Jadeveon Clowney.
Yep. No, that's a good point. Hey, Mo, let me ask you this. Now, you look at this team, how it's coming together. We see the inside, the story with Hard Knocks. We've seen what's happening with some of these players playing well and surprises. If this team stays healthy, because that's always a big if, they have the brutal schedule. What's the upside on this team? You have a lot of people now that are saying, hey, this team could actually maybe be in contention for a wild card playoff spot. To win the division would take some monumental changes. But do you see this team perhaps pushing 8-9 wins?
I heard Lindsay say this earlier, and success from the previous year doesn't always carry over to the next year, and that is true. Every year we see a team go from the bottom to the top. It happens. Now, looking at the Raiders' schedule, I do agree with you, Scott. The schedule scares me. I do think the Raiders are an improved team, but you got to look at who they play. And it's going to be rough. I had their ceiling at 8-8. After the Andrew Luck retirement report, I think they're a 6-7 win team. I think you said Vegas has them at 6.5, so I'm right there with it. I would take the under because, again, it's a rough schedule, and them being away from home with a young team could wear on them, and I think that they're going to fall behind early. Now, your co-host did mention, injuries happen. The Broncos may play Drew Lock in that season finale, and if they do, I think the Raiders win that game, so it may take them over 7-9. But 6-7 wins seems reasonable for the Raiders this year.
All right. Moe Moton, of course, you can check him out at MoeMoton on Twitter and on Bleacher Report fan-sided. He does great work. And if you want the truth, objectively, he's not a fanboy. He's not a hater. He's in the middle where a good journalist should be. So, Moe Moton, thanks for joining us, man. We'll have you on again real soon. We appreciate the time.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Mo.
All right. Moe Moton, always great. I mean, that
breaking news from Mo with
yes.
Doug Martin.
Okay, rub it in.
I don't know if we should be surprised. The Raiders were actually set to move on.
You're nasty. No, just kidding.
I don't know. I'm just saying, I don't know if we should really be surprised about the Doug Martin thing. They were set to move on without him until the Isaiah Crowell Achilles injury.
Right.
So maybe it's something that was already kind of in the works because they were going to move on.
Yeah.
So now maybe we shouldn't be surprised, but
you're not surprised, Lindsay, are you?
I didn't realize that Doug Martin was still in the league. I'm like, is this the same Doug Martin from Tampa Bay? Is this the right one? Good for Doug Martin. We wish him the best.
Know his nickname? You get extra points.
Dougie Dougs.
No. Muscle Hamster. was his nickname. But I will
was
tell you
close, at
this.
least.
That's why I asked you the question, because you were like, Doug Martin's in the NFL. I could see it in your face.
Yeah.
It was awesome. But we appreciate Mo being with us. And like I said to Raider fans from the beginning of OTAs, be happy with progress. Be excited that this team will be much better than it was. Just don't get overly pumped when they do really well, and don't get too down when they lose.
Yep.
That's all. Be realistic is all you have to do. So, all right, we're going to step aside. When we come back, attorney Michael Troiano will be with us. We're going to do our NFL blotter segment. There was some trouble in the NFL this week. We'll talk about it. Cocaine possession. You're listening to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
Meet the boys. Sports Radio. You found the most in-depth coverage of the Silver and Black. This is Silver and Black Today, Live on CBS Sports Radio 1140. Here's your host, Scott Gobranson.
Welcome back to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio. Thanks to our guest thus far. Moe Moton spent 2 parts of the hour with us. We appreciate getting his roster breakdown. Also, Austin Gayle from Pro Football Focus and Jesse Reed from sportsnot.com. Also, don't forget, go to London with us, london2019.silverandblacktoday.com. Check that out. You want to get over there. A little bit of tea and crumpets with Chaz. We're going to auction that off. Chaz will be wearing one of the guard costumes from Buckingham Palace
today.
Too funny. All right. Well, we are going to switch gears now and talk a little bit about, as we do all the time, our great sponsor, attorney Michael Troiano, who doesn't matter if it's a small issue or a larger issue, criminal defense attorney. Michael Troiano is the guy to call. And we had a little incident in the NFL. Bum, bum, bum. Pat's safety, Patrick Chung, scheduled to be arraigned next Wednesday on a felony charge of cocaine possession, according to the Belknap County Attorney's Office up in Laconia. Lindsay, am I saying that right?
Yep.
Laconia, New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm.
Lindsay played college hockey in New Hampshire. That's why I'm asking her. In the statement, they said Chung was not arrested at the time police found the evidence, but rather after the police investigation. Of course, Chung, 10-year veteran, big part of that Pats defense, broke his arm, I believe, in the Super Bowl. 140 career games, 110 starts. Now we bring in attorney Michael Troiano. So, Michael, how do you get pulled over? You have cocaine in your car, allegedly. Right? I got that right? Allegedly?
I thought it was in his home.
Oh, his home. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, his home.
Just clear.
Okay. So I'm just trying to see if you're awake.
I figured you were trying to just get me off my game.
Michael's a new father, so we want to see if he's awake. But so they find it in his home, but they don't arrest him at the time. Even though they found the evidence there. Is that unusual that, look, I get pulled over in my car, someone comes to my home, they come in my home with a search warrant, they find cocaine, but they don't arrest me. Why does that usually happen in your experience?
Well, big surprise to the listeners out there, but if you're famous and you're an athlete, you get treated a lot differently than everybody else.
Stop.
So that's 100% the reason why. They might come out later and play it up to be something different than it really is, but quite frankly, they realized whose home they were in, and they called their chief or whatever the proper verbiage is in that area of law enforcement and made sure that they crossed dotted their I's, crossed their T's, triple-checked all their work before they even thought about bringing forth charges against them.
Now, in a time where we're starting to see things like the legalization of marijuana, a cocaine possession charge, even if it's a small amount, talk about the gravity of a situation where you're facing what he's facing with this indictment.
Sure. Well, this case is in New Hampshire, but to relate it back to Nevada, for example, if you're here in Clark County in Las Vegas, and you even have the tiniest amount, like literally 1 gram. So if you've ever cooked or baked anything, just a little tiny bit of cocaine or any substance other than marijuana, it's a felony charge today. That's going to be changing here. The legislature just did some interesting things in the previous session, but as of today, if you have the tiniest amount of cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, you name it, it is currently charged as a possession of a controlled substance. If you possess 4 grams, which again is a very tiny amount, that's low-level trafficking with mandatory prison time if you're convicted or can't work out a good plea deal. So it's a very serious deal here and across the United States.
Now, when you're looking at the situation with Patrick Chung, he doesn't have any other priors, right? So he wasn't arrested for any issues with drugs, especially this level of narcotics. What does that do for you as a defense attorney if you were representing him and not knowing the laws of New Hampshire? I get that because you're licensed to practice here and a couple other states. But where do you start with that if it's his first offense, but it's such a serious offense?
Well, in this particular situation, the first thing you're going to look at to see if the police even had probable cause to enter his home. The details have been very lacking at this point. They call it a service call, so I'm assuming that an alarm system went off. The neighbor said that there was some remodeling going on, and we want to see if the police even had a valid reason to enter it. So maybe it was a welfare check. They were under the belief that the house was broken into or somebody was hurt or there was a crime being committed that potentially could give them the legal authority to enter into your home without without an arrest warrant or a search warrant in this particular situation. So assuming that's the case, then we've got to figure out where exactly was the cocaine found. Was it just laying on there on the table like a scene from Scarface, or was it hidden in a drawer in some other way? Because the way in which you could be convicted or charged of possession of cocaine or possession of any illegal substance or a firearm is either actual possession, meaning they found it on your person, like there's a video of you doing lines, or it's in your pocket, or constructive possession, where, for example, when I drove here today, if they were to go find something in my vehicle in the parking lot right now, you would assume, since I'm the registered owner of that vehicle and I don't give access to my vehicle to anyone other than my wife, that I have constructive possession over any items that are in there. And since that's his home, it looks like he's going to have constructive possession. That's going to be the prosecution's argument at this point. And from a defense standpoint, that's what you need to attack, to figure out where exactly it was, potentially point out who might else have been in the home, who has access to it, maids, trainers, you name it.
So in that situation, you're talking about constructive possession.
Correct.
If I have somebody over for a party, I have friends over, and they leave it there, but then they find it in my house, is that a defense you go with? Is that something? I mean, it's a real possibility, right? People do things all the time. You don't know that you're aware that you host them in your home, and suddenly, bam, somebody comes in to check for, was a well check, it was an alarm, whatever it may be, and it's there. How do you go about defending a client who might not have been involved with it in the first place?
It's a real possibility, and a lot of that's going to come down to the individual client's credibility. If it's, for you, an example, and you have no prior criminal history or no drug history, and I could prove you recently had a gathering or a party over at your house and present that information to the prosecutor, that may be helpful. But if you're the kind of guy or gal that's been in and out of trouble with the law, especially drug possession, they're just going to laugh that off, and we're going to have to look at other avenues of defense and potentially a motion to suppress based upon any police action that was not within the confines of the law.
Well, now, we certainly hope that our listeners are not breaking the law like this is alleged.
Somebody's doing it right now.
But somebody's, yeah. But whether it's drunk driving, whether it's possession of anything that you're not supposed to have, illegal, especially drugs. In this case, Michael, we always try to bring it back and make it real for our listeners too. Is if you find yourself in this situation, I think a lot of people, especially if they feel like, well, it's not mine and it was a friend's or whatever, you hear so much advice that don't talk to the police until you talk to a lawyer first.
Correct.
Right? And that's the case, is if you find yourself in this position or you have a loved one who finds himself in this position, what's the first thing you do as soon as you're either arrested or something like this happens?
Just invoke your right to remain silent. It's natural. Anytime you have police contact, and even me, to date, when you get pulled over for a speeding ticket, your heart kind of stops. It's not natural to see those lights and to be interrogated by the police. And so most clients try to talk themselves out of a situation or minimize their involvement. And all you're doing is giving the police officer more and more information that they're going to use against you, and try to find any inconsistencies that make you look like a liar. And in most situations, people aren't generally lying. Yeah, sure, people lie. Let's not be naive. But we all perceive things in a different way. You and I can sit here and go home and tell our wives about how the show went, and we see it from different angles. It doesn't necessarily mean we're lying. So I don't believe that there's any reason to speak to a police officer in those situations, because all you're doing is harming yourself, and I'd rather my client be quiet. So if, in fact, they are charged at a later date, we control the entire narrative. He can write his report however he wants. You remain silent, and then once we get to court, it's our opportunity to tell our story.
Well, and for those out there, Michael, too, because I think, when we talk about you, because you're so involved with the show, you're on the show all the time, you're a sponsor of the show, when they hear criminal defense attorney, they think like, okay, I robbed a bank or something. But talk a little bit about the different types of things that you do to defend folks who need your help.
Sure. So I'm born and raised in Vegas. Excuse me. So I'm very familiar with the Valley and the area. I went back east for law school for a couple of years, so I got a little bit of break of this heat. But as far as my practice is concerned, I've been practicing Nevada to be 11 years this October, so a little bit over a decade now. And the only area of law I handle is criminal. So anything from a minor traffic ticket to the most serious offense you could think of, DUIs, domestic violence, drug charges, gang crimes, that's my wheelhouse. So if you are being investigated by the police or accused of any crime, no matter how big or small, I'm your guy.
That's good. See, it's good to know people. And in your case, I hope I never find myself in that situation. Although I've had traffic tickets, and you've helped me with my traffic tickets. Michael is also my lawyer. So there you go.
I will answer your call, Scott.
Yeah. So you got to like that. So I've used him. I'm not, you're not just a sponsor of the show. You actually represent me as well. So I appreciate that very much. But when you look at these NFL cases too, it's got to be, if you had a case with an NFL player, it's hard, right, because of the notoriety. Now, even if they're the cleanest of cleanest guys, like it looks like Chung has not had any other priors or anything like that, it's still hard, though, because of that notoriety. It helps them, yes, but it can hurt them as well, too, right?
It's the proverbial double-edged sword. If you have a client such as Mr. Chung, who, for all intents and purposes, we're aware of doesn't have prior criminal history, and that may come out. Again, we might not be aware of prior things that the police department just kind of let go because he was a patriot. But let's just assume, for example, that I'm representing a future Raider here in town, and they are clean as it gets. They've been in the league for 10 years, nominated for the Walter Payton Man of the Year Award, all that. Those things are helpful, but at the same time, if you get a prosecutor who understands the gravity of the situation, they're new to the Valley, they want to make it known that they're not going to just let the Raiders do whatever they want. I could see that being problematic as well, whereas if I was to represent, I don't know, a family member or friend or some guy that you met on the street and you sent to my office, just a regular Joe or Jane, with the same type of situation, it might be a little bit easier to clean up.
That's right. Well, Michael Troiano, attorney Michael Troiano, you can check him out at TroianoVegasLaw.com, right there. And the phone number?
702-843-5500.
All right. TroianoVegasLaw.com. Michael Troiano, thanks for joining us today, buddy.
Ready for some football, man.
Yes. It's that time of the year. You got to like that. All right. We're going to step aside. We'll come back and close the show. You're listening to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
They say memories are made at the ballpark.
What's the favorite baseball memory? Listening to Don Drysdale and Sandy Koufax pitching.
One strike away. Sandy into his windup. Here's the pitch. Swung on and missed. A perfect game.
Create 162 new memories with us this season. Your exclusive Las Vegas home for the National League champion Los Angeles Dodgers. CBS Sports Radio 1140.
The law office of Michael A. Troiano is a proud supporter of all things Las Vegas, including its people, specializing in legal representation for all criminal defense matters ranging from misdemeanors to the most serious felonies. Attorney Michael Troiano provides clients with the legal strategy and professional representation needed in court. If you or a loved one find yourself in a legal situation and need a tough defense on your side, Michael Troiano can help. Call now for a free consultation, 702-843-5500, or learn more at TroianoVegasLaw.com.
This football season, get in the game with the William Hill College Pick'em Football Contest. Each week of the 10-week contest, pick 7 available games against the point spread and take home your share of the cash, with 100% of the entry fees collected being paid back to the top 10 places. For a $500 season entry fee, get to 49 wins and stake your claim to a $25,000 cash bonus. Week 1 of the contest picks must begin by 8 a.m. on Saturday, September 7th. Go to williamhill.us. That's williamhill.us. Through a full-service William Hill Sportsbook kiosk in the state of Nevada or full-service William Hill Sportsbook. There are no exceptions.
Warning. This product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical. Welcome to Velo, a modern take on nicotine. It's the hassle-free nicotine pouch that leaves the chargers, smoke, and mess where they belong, in the past. So whether you're mid-flight or mid-meeting, on the grind or off the grid, living large or laying low, with Velo, there are no limits to where you can go. Go to Velo.com now to find your retailer. Velo, no limits. Website restricted to age 21 plus, tobacco consumers. Underage sale prohibited.
Triple-digit temperatures mean it's pool and lake season. This is Las Vegas Fire Chief William McDonald reminding you to stay safe around water at all times with a few helpful tips for the season. Grown-up supervision means grown-ups that know what to do in an emergency. Make sure someone in your group knows CPR because every second matters. Together, we can make this the summer of safety. Brought to you by these fine sponsors.
City of Las Vegas Fire and Rescue, Dignity Health, St. Rose Dominican Hospitals, and Southern Nevada Toyota dealers.
Heading to Toyota's national clearance event. We got great deals for all our friends. The event's on now, but you gotta remember, these offers are valid till the 3rd of September. So better get here before the end of the song. The last of the 2019s won't last long.
Get 0% APR financing for 60 months on a new 2019 Highlander.
with $1,667 per thousand borrowed. Or get $3,000 cash back on a new Highlander. Toyota, let's go places. Participating dealers only.
APR on approved credit from Toyota Financial Services. Cashback savings from Toyota Motor Sales USA Inc. Does not include college and military rebate. Must be applied to the transaction. No cash payment will be made to consumer. Excludes hybrid, varies by region. See dealer for details. Offers end September 3rd.
Visit your Southern Nevada Toyota dealer. Or for more information, please log on to toyota.com. Toyota, let's go places.
Triple-digit temperatures mean it's pool and lake season. This is Las Vegas Fire Chief William McDonald reminding you to stay safe around water at all times with a few helpful tips for the season. Renting watercraft can be the experience of the summer, but make sure that you know the rules and always practice defensive driving similar to the rules of the road. When you're behind the wheel, keep a safe distance from others at all times. Together, we can make this the summer of safety. Brought to you by these fine sponsors.
City of Las Vegas Fire and Rescue, Dignity Health, St. Rose Dominican Hospitals, and Southern Nevada Toyota dealers.
The Dodgers take on the Yankees this afternoon at 3 on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
This is Silver and Black Today, live on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
Oh, yes, we're bringing it home. The home and around the bend they go.
Down the stretch.
Down the stretch. What was the guy at Del Mar when we were growing up? What was his name?
Trevor Denman.
Trevor Denman. Thank you.
Voice. He
Yes.
still does Del Mar, actually. He's kind of slowed down a little bit. He doesn't sound as good as he used to. But, man,
Yeah.
he was the top of the top back then.
Only some of us get better with age. All right. We are back on Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio. Chaz Osborne, Lindsey Brown join us. All right, guys, so we're going to close this out. I want to talk a little bit about, and I know I've mentioned it a couple times earlier in the show, but we are going to London.
Crikey.
Lindsay, you got here a little
Crikey.
late. That's the wrong
Hello.
country.
Sam,
No.
the criminals, the old criminal, not anymore, Australia.
Yeah.
The criminals of the Brits.
That's right.
That's right.
It's going to be a good time. Raider Nation. I
yeah,
was there last
so-
year. Raider Nation was out in full force.
So,
and it was a really good
Lindsay,
time.
have you ever been to the UK?
I have never been to Europe.
Okay, so it's too bad you couldn't come with us, but we're all going over there. We're going to do the show live from the stadium in Tottenham. Tottenham.
Yep.
So we are going to be there. We want you to go with us. Okay, so check out london2019.silverandblacktoday.com, where you'll find our partner TravelBee, where you can book your travel. It starts at $999 for your airfare and hotel. That's all inclusive of those two transfers, and then your game tickets. In addition to that, are little. You have to go buy those little separate, but TravelBee has you covered. So come join us. I know it's now like 50 some days away, or a little less than that, but it's coming quick. You don't want to miss your chance to hang out. There's a lot of Raider fans in the UK, guys, and so we're excited about going over there and doing the show live from the stadium, but also just hanging out with Raider Nation, right?
It's fun.
And we already have some listeners who've booked, so make sure you get out there and do that. Also, the other thing, and Lindsay doesn't know that we're going to sell her something later,
boy.
but we have a sweepstakes going on. Yes, a sweepstakes. Can you imagine that? Next week, or excuse me, 2 weeks, we're going to be live at the Javante Woods Foundation Golf Tournament. Icky Woods' son, who unfortunately passed away at 19 years of age due to asthma. We're going to be live out there on location at Bally High Golf Course doing our show from 8 to 10. And so we're going to have a lot of guests, names you will recognize from the world of the NFL, the NBA, NHL, everybody. So we're going to do it out there, but we're also selling these $20 sweepstakes tickets through Charity Mania. You can find the tab on our Facebook page and also on Twitter. We will send it out again later today. $20, you get 17 weeks, you get 3 teams a week. It's just total score. You don't have to have any experience, Lindsay, even betting or anything. It's just you get 3 teams, and the
Totally
sum
random.
of your 3 teams is your score.
Wow.
And you can even win losing.
Really?
Yes.
That sounds like a kind of game I would like to be involved in.
See, so you get tickets, and you can get money, $400 a week as a winner, $17,000 for the year. Also, things like $25 if you have the lowest ticket. So if you have the worst week ever, you can still win money. So check it out. You can buy them online. We also physically have copies.
Yep.
Although I think Chaz has been using them somewhere. I don't know what you've been using them for.
Ah.
No, he's been selling.
Been trading them for alcohol.
He's trying to convince some folks on the street that they're free alcohol tickets. But we are selling those, and the proceeds are going to go to the Javante Woods Foundation. So we're not just doing it so Chaz, Lindsay, and I can go have lunch after the show. We're doing
That's
it.
important, though.
It is.
It's important.
It is.
No, they're going to a good cause.
They are going to a good cause. So we want to help you do that. We're going to be there next week. We also have donated, thanks to a good friend of ours, we've donated a signed Cliff Branch football, autographed Cliff Branch, the late Cliff Branch, who we just lost a few weeks ago. That's going to be part of their silent auction. That's also our contribution to the Javante Woods Foundation. So make sure you go buy those tickets. Join us in London. It's going to be a blast. All right, guys. So we have a few minutes left. Raiders go into this final preseason game. Lindsay, I'll start with you. What do you need to see out of this team before they head into the regular season?
Well, I think I just need to see the cohesion keep moving forward. I think everybody kind of knows that the fourth preseason game is pretty much no starters are usually going to be out there, especially since there's been a couple of injuries in the preseason thus far across the league. So I think you got to stay healthy and you got to stay just as that unit moving forward. That attitude we were talking about earlier, just being why not us, why not now, and just heading into the season with just all the cylinders firing.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Just more of the same. We're 3-0, obviously, and everything's going in the right direction. So let's just see more of the same, keep more the focus, and keep the momentum going. One last thing, I don't know if we talked about Antonio Brown had his second grievance hearing Friday with the same independent arbitrator as the previous hearing, and they indicated that they'll have a decision early this week about the helmet. So I know we're done talking about the helmet, but this should actually be the final.
The final. But unless they find a third way to file a grievance. But I know, I agree with you, and he's gone through the I've said all along, Antonio Brown has followed the rules.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
There's a process in place by the CBA so he can file a grievance, and he's done it. I still don't think he's going to win. But, if he does, great. If he doesn't, that's okay, too. Because you know what? He's doing what he thinks is best. He's doing the process as it's outlined by the league and by the union. Mm-hmm. And so you got to credit him for that. And I got no problem with it. So it'll be interesting. But, guys, we are going to be back next week. Of course, it's a holiday weekend next week. Make sure you watch us on Twitter and YouTube for information on the guests. But we want to thank Lindsay and welcome you, Lindsay.
Thank you for having me. It was a blast.
It's a blast. I'm sure we'll have you on again. Welcome to the CBS Sports Radio 1140 family and the Intercom family. And as always, Chaz.
Hey.
Chaz, by the way, Lindsay, his official title is the International Man of Leisure.
And I came to the right show. I'm making plenty of friends that I need to make in this town this morning.
That's right, Chaz, buddy. Thanks, as always. He's got it again. All right. And I also want to thank the gentleman behind the dials, as we used to call them, and that is our executive producer, Mark Bonilla. Mark, thanks for coming in on a Sunday morning. Usually
no problem.
I know you have another show after this on 840.
I have many shows in this building.
You can wear sunglasses walking into those studios, too, like you did this morning, like a boss.
Gotta be a pimp.
Mark is the man, and we appreciate him and everything he did for us today. But most of all, we appreciate you guys. Thank you for being with us here on the Silver and Black Today on CBS Sports Radio 1140. We'll be back next week. Check out silverandblacktoday.com and also CBS Sports Radio 1148 AM. And don't forget, download the radio.com app. You can listen to us, take us all in your pocket with you, no matter where you go. For everyone here, I am Scalco Branson. Thanks, and may the autumn wind always be at your back. Take care, everybody.